Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Honestly the podcast. This is the second episode of season 3, and today we are with Cael. Hello.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, I came across Cael on TikTok. Weirdly enough, I was just searching through sort of mental health and Aboriginal TikToks because I just wanted to see a little bit what your community is doing, and I came across yours, which his TikTok is extremely interesting for religious topics, especially, and controversial topics. English is hard, and and we started talking a little bit, and he nicely said yes to come on Honestly the podcast. I'm very happy.
Of course, why not?
So, can you please introduce yourself and what you're doing?
Yeah, so my name's Cael O'Donnell. I am a TikToker. I'm a family therapist by day, and then I also have my own podcast, Why I Believe. I studied religions on the side, so I'm really interested in religions, and I do a controversial podcast on religions, and also I'm a motivational speaker for the Aboriginal culture and for our community, and I like to raise awareness for mental health and other topics that are not talked about as much. So yeah. I like to be sort of a sounding board for those.
Well, that's really amazing. I saw also that you were a therapist and a psychologist, and I thought, how do I pick this person out of everyone on TikTok, mostly because you were Aboriginal, and then you're also a psychologist and you're coming on this podcast about mental health. I really thought, like, this is meant to be. This has to happen. Seriously. So why did you decide to create a TikTok?
I decided to do it TikTok. Well, I started off on TikTok just doing all of the challenges and trying to keep up with today's kind of thing, and I couldn't dance, and my sister said, "You're just making a fool of yourself. You should just delete TikTok." And so I just stopped doing TikTok, and then one day I started doing videos on why I'm an atheist and why I don't believe in God, and talking about religions and sharing my information about religion. And people started to really get on board with that. And they said, we like how you're just in the middle. You don't have any views either side. You're very neutral, and, you just share the facts. And I'm really about facts. I don't really go with the whole debates or anything. I just like to share facts about things. So I just share videos on TikTok that are based on facts, so the statistics of religions or the statistics of how a religion's coping in a country, or the history of religion. Sort of, that's my kind of thing on TikTok. So that's how I started TikTok, and what keeps me going is just being able to spread information and also spread tolerance of other religions and just bring unity to the world.
Yeah, that's a very, very good purpose. It's a very big and complicated purpose, but it's one of the things. I've studied comparative religion when I was a kid as well. So when I saw your TikToks and the videos about the facts and the statistics and just explaining the basics of most religions, I was very pleased, because it's very hard to find people who are interested in more than one. And yeah, it's something that we should talk about a lot more.
Definitely. And that's right. Not many people want to talk about other than their own religion, but I don't have a religion, so I can talk about all of them.
So were you ever religious at all?
So I was raised in a home that was kind of split. So we had sort of the father figure of the home. He was quite religious, and our mum was an atheist, and we didn't really have much to do with religion until later in my life when I moved into my father's house, and I became a Christian, and I just went full bore with Christianity. I was an evangelical Pentecostal, rolling on the floor, speaking in tongues person in Christianity. I look back and just go, wow, I would have probably been a patient of mine if I wasn't, or a client of mine if somebody found me on the street. But luckily enough, I decided it wasn't for me, and I still have friends that are Christian, and yeah, I don't have any hard feelings against Christianity. I just came to my own sort of path, and yeah, I don't have anything against religions. I think, yeah, it is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, it's also for me, for example, I don't mind religion at all. It's just as long as you can have your religion, you can believe in whatever you want. It doesn't bother me as long as you don't try to push it onto other people, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree.
All right. So, can I ask from what Aboriginal community you originate from?
That's a good question. So I come from the Barkindji tribe, so that's in Victoria. It's kind of around the sort of Lake Cargellico area, even the area that I'm from, sort of upper Victoria.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different tribes, but my family is primarily from the Barkindji tribe.
All right. So I'm just gonna ask this now because I also want to spread a better message. Is that question that I just asked you correct? Like, is it okay for a white person, which I am, and I'm French on top of that, so is that okay to ask an Aboriginal person?
I think it's fine. Yeah, that's just sort of like asking what province is your family from France. I mean, um, there's nothing wrong with asking where a person's from, and I think that a lot of Aboriginal people would like that question because it reminds them that they're not just Australian, but they
Mm,
also are their own native culture as well. So it brings them
yeah.
back to the root of where they're from.
Yeah, exactly. It took me like a bit, maybe a few years to understand a little bit of the different communities, Aboriginal communities in Australia, because I haven't been here for that long. And basically, in Europe, we don't hear about the Aboriginal story at all. We hear that they were Aboriginal and they're white people. But just like in America, it's a lot of like white people came in and then everyone lived in peace and harmony, and that's all we hear. But and then I don't know, you just really dig deep into history and you realize that white people are kind of trash sometimes. Yeah, we did a lot of shit, and I come from a perspective of being French. We're not better. We have
Mm.
invaded so many countries. Do you consider being part of the Aboriginal community a gift or sort of a complication?
I think it's a kind of both in a way. I find it, I never used to think it was a gift. In fact, when I was growing up, I was kind of ashamed to be Aboriginal just because of the stereotypes
Mm,
and what we're sort of known for. Not all of us, but the culture is tainted by addiction and poverty and a lot
mm,
of things that I didn't want to associate with violence, that kind of thing, and I just was ashamed to be Aboriginal. But then as I started to grow up and I started to look into history before this country was colonized and our true history, I started to realize that no, there's a beauty behind it and that I'm grateful and happy to be who I am because there's such rich culture behind us. And, you know, as one of the oldest known civilizations in the world, it actually was sort of an honor now to be Aboriginal. But one of the complications I'd say is just trying to get the culture to be able to, as a voice for the Indigenous people, trying to allow us to heal in certain areas. So one of the areas that I'm working on is shame, to try and remove that shame
mm,
of trying to be afraid of becoming something or doing something with your life. That there's shame behind it, that I'm going to be judged or there's going to be racism out there somewhere. So there's complications sort of inside the culture with those kind of views that we might hold about other cultures as well, or
yeah.
even just sort of resentment and bitterness that we can choose to hold on to or we can choose to let go of. It's in us. We are the ones that choose to forgive
Yeah.
and to move on. And that might be a controversial thing, but I stand by what I say with you. We can't change the past. We can only change how we accept it or how we move on from it and realize that the people of today, half of them weren't around when those things happened. So we can't blame the people of today for doing it. We just have to choose how we move forward and make something out of ourselves. And yeah, that's sort of how I view it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good standpoint. This is also in mental health, we learn that when something wrong is happening to you, you can't just hold on because of the sentiment of injustice and things being unfair, because it eats you up very slowly and it just makes everything worse. And you won't be able to properly communicate with people as long as you have resentment, and you won't be able to share a message as someone who's representing the Aboriginal community. You couldn't possibly give the proper message if you were resentful and just saying like fuck white people, basically. Fuck the English, because goddamn, they really. When I heard about some of the history about the Aboriginal community when the convicts came here, I was incredibly surprised because it hasn't been that long as well, and such a young country is still very fresh. So it's amazing to find people like you who can just pass and just say it's time to move on and it's time to flourish as a community. It's very great.
And I think that's really what would we choose to do? Do we want to stay resentful and live in a culture that's just going to just not embrace, or are we going to move on? We have the choice. We can move on. Not everyone has this view. There's probably a small amount of people that have a view of wanting to forgive and move on. They still think that we're going to, be able to come back to what we used to be. We're not going to be able to change it. This is the way that it is right now. And it's a way that all the other countries, lots of other countries that were colonized by the British, they, like India and other places like that, they're never going to be what they used to be. And this is the new normal, and we have to decide how we internally are going to process that. So I don't speak for all Indigenous people. I speak for the way that I run my life. And when somebody does something against me, I decide whether I want to forgive them or not. And forgiveness is my decision. It's not theirs. And it's not going to impact them if I forgive them or not. It's really something I can choose to have happiness, or I can choose to be stuck and, not heal, basically.
Yeah, this is one of the message we try to talk about a lot on this podcast, is that as long as you don't forgive the people around you who did wrong, you're never going to be able to really heal. And there's a very big difference between forgiving and forgetting. So for the Aboriginal community, never forget, that's for sure, but forgive, because as you said, most people who did those horrible things are dead now. And we just need more people to talk about the Aboriginal culture in a better way. And I'm so happy you're doing this today, because this is so important. And you're amazing at speaking as well. Jesus Christ. Very soft tone of voice. I thought I was just
I could do ASMR.
Oh, please do it. I'm begging you. Please do a religious ASMR. It would be amazing. Another question that I'm wondering is, do you think being part of the Aboriginal community is affecting your mental health?
Being part of the Aboriginal community, is it affecting my mental health? I suppose there is sort of like genetic predispositions that Indigenous people have when it comes to mental health. I suppose there's ancestral trauma there, so we're more susceptible as a culture to have sort of the trauma issues, stolen generational kind of trauma that has been passed down. In the Indigenous communities, we've got a higher rate of suicide and lethality of suicide. So where our Caucasian population may not be as determined, there's more of a determination in the Indigenous population to pull the trigger, basically, as opposed to the Caucasian. So there is that kind of predispositions that we have to certain mental health issues. Do I personally think that being Aboriginal, I have, mental health issues or anything like that? I think I've gone through moments. I think mental illness or mental health is on a scale. It's not something that it can be overcome. It can be coped with. You can deal with the facing mental illness.
Yeah.
But for me, I think that it would definitely be something like the trauma that's passed down, or even just the mindsets of, like I said, the shame and things like that. Those could be, when multiplied, it can become depression, it can become anxiety, social anxiety from going outside because I think someone's going to be racist to me. That's going to hold people back. So. Yeah, those kinds of things. It really is down to genetics, but yeah, that's sort of how I would say.
Yeah, it's why I was asking is just because yes, there is predisposition. One of my friends is from the Jewish community, for example, and there's also in the Jewish community a big predisposition for mental health and nephrosis and other diseases. But I was more thinking that it's already a big trauma to have gone through what you have gone through as a culture, as an entire population, and then you still have to live today with stereotypes and just basic racism. And in the secluded areas of Australia, it might be a lot different than here where I am in Sydney, where no one really cares about your race mostly, but it's not everywhere like that, and it could engender a lot of mental health conditions. So
Definitely.
yeah, and the fact that you're a therapist might help a little bit because it's your job.
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm doing my job. I might be saying all the wrong things and lose my credibility.
I don't think you are. I am actually very, very impressed because we haven't met face to face before doing this, or we haven't called or anything, and you never really know before you record a remote podcast. And I'm very, very surprised. You're so at ease, and you're very well spoken.
Well, I feel like I'm on my own podcast because this is exactly what is the setup when I feel like I'm interviewing you.
Oh, exactly. Here you go. We're interviewing each other. What are the best and the worst comments you had concerning you being Aboriginal?
Well, I suppose I've had interesting experiences. One of the main ones I'll tell you. When I was a kid, I was in Scouts. So Scouts are sort of like Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, and I did Scouts. And we would go canoeing and tying knots and stuff. And we went camping once, and I hadn't really experienced racism before. I was only a young boy, and all these white guys, they're all there. And I remember we were digging the toilet. So digging the hole to go to the toilet there. And then we were all packing up, like we had a great kind of camping experience, and everyone was all cool with all of us. Everyone was fine with me. And then we went to pack up like the toilet, and then all of the guys were like packing up, and then they're just like, oh, and they said to me, they're just like, oh, that's you down there, you're a piece of shit, basically. Oh. And I was like, because, shit's brown. And so I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was just like, I wasn't expecting that because I was thinking, I thought we were all friends. I thought we were all, buddies. And yeah, they just basically said that. And I think like that was like a shock to the system. I went home and I was just really shaken by it. But since then, I can't really pinpoint any exact thing apart from online. And I know that online cyberbullying is really something, and it's there. But I don't think a lot of people would say it to you face to face. But in terms of other racist experiences, the bad things that people have said, I haven't really experienced, and that's one thing that I am on a mission as well, to be honest with how much racism you actually experience in Australia. Do you experience that much, or are you perceiving that much? Because what I get, and even in my own family, I get a lot of people. And as a therapist, I'm sort of trained to challenge people's thinking. My own family would say, I went into the real estate the other day, and she was in the mood, and she did this, and she threw this at me and that. And I was just like, was she having a bad day, or was it because you're Aboriginal? So I like to challenge people about did they do that every time you go in there? Oh, no, she did it that day. Well, she was probably just having a bad day. Why do you think that that's racism?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to do with racism where a lot of the time it can be self-perceived. You're just perceiving that that person's being racist, but there's so many other factors. They could have a bad day. Perhaps, they don't like their job. Perhaps, it could be so many different things. And maybe how you're perceiving a look. I mean, a look could be anything. So I think a lot of people will say that a lot of Aboriginal people will say that Australia is racist to Aboriginal people. But what I find in my own personal world is that if you present yourself and you actually, you do good for yourself and try to be a good person, I think most of Australia will just embrace you. And that you are just as equal as everybody else. So I think that is an important thing to also look at. The best things that people have probably said is that they're proud to see somebody who's standing up to say these things and not cower away in the corner. And even writing a book about it, writing my book No Shame, it's going to be something that's, I don't really care at the moment what people are going to think, because it's about getting the message out there. If I'm kicked out of the culture, oh well. I have an opinion about it and I really want to share it because I think it's going to be, a healing message, a message that's going to heal some fractures in our culture that is keeping us from actually, getting better and doing better. So, yeah, that's some dirt on me.
Well, if you want a really good comment as well, I've been looking at your face right now in front of the computer, and you have one of the best set of eyelashes I've ever seen in anyone.
Do you know what? When I was a kid, my sister would tell me that all the time, and I would used to get the scissors, and I used to trim my eyelashes, and people would used to tell when I go to school, they're like, "You've been playing with your eyelashes, haven't you?"
Oh, they're great. Just, go with it.
Free mascara.
Yeah, this is very unfair because that mostly happens with men. And as a woman, you look at it and you're like, damn, I have to pay $40 for my mascara. I can't. Come on.
Damn, $40. Wow, I don't know the prices of makeup, but you can buy a lot with $40.
Oh, I know this. Every time I have to buy makeup, I'm like, do I really need this? Probably, but no. Yeah, female economy is one of the highest economy in the world. Listen, everything we have to buy is so expensive.
And I complain about a $5 toothbrush. I'm like, oh no, I might go for the cheaper one from the reject shop or something.
All right, so next question. Do you have any advice that you would give to anyone who's not part of the Aboriginal community in ways to talking about you or talking to you? So questions not to ask, how not to talk about Aboriginal community, all of this.
Well, I suppose I don't like to separate us. I mean, there's only one race in the world, and that's the human race. So for me, I know that there's probably sort of ways to talk or ways that might be best to talk in communities. I don't know how it is in the Northern Territory kind of cultures, what they would do. They're more an authentic, rich kind of culture. They haven't been too impacted by, I suppose, main society. But for me, I just think that, I don't really know of anything that people shouldn't ask or people shouldn't say. I don't think that there's anything that I can think of. Maybe I'm mistaken, but there's obviously the main things about, calling people derogatory terms, where that sort of is quite common sense. But
you would be surprised.
Well, I mean, for me, even if somebody says it, I'd probably just say, "Oh, we say it like that," or. But I haven't experienced that. I think most people that I come in contact with, they are respectful. And if someone's respectful to me, I'm going to be respectful to them. But I'm also just respectful to them anyway. I don't need to wait for respect. I'll show respect, and then until you are no longer worthy of my respect because you lost my respect. But yeah, I'm pretty chill. I just consider myself Australian, just like everybody else, just like you're Australian, just like, yeah, we're all one.
Yeah. There's one thing that I want to come back on your idea of like perception is everything, and what you just said about giving respect no matter what, until someone really pushes your boundaries. This is one of the things that I try to touch on with the people around me, is that the perception of what you have around you is everything. So if you feel like everyone is against you, you will probably create this tension naturally, and people will start getting against you because they can feel and they can read your body language more than you can imagine. But and for race problems, it's a little bit of the same thing. Give respect, have a very calm perception of what's happening, and if someone is being a dickhead, just tell them. Especially in Australia, Australian people are so happy to learn things.
Yeah.
And yeah, everyone is getting along here. For a French person, that was shocking for me. But yeah, it's the same. There's some things you can't really say to French people without having a dirty look. I'm very tired of hearing croissant every time I say that I'm French. Please, people, don't do this. Baguette, croissant, no. Thank you. But I also saw from the Aboriginal communities that maybe if you're not part of it, try not to talk about them or about the community like you know everything about it. Just as a white person, understand that you don't know even half of it.
Yeah, I see what you mean with the questioning. I suppose, like, for example, like I walked into an Aboriginal centre, like a corporation that like helps the community of Aboriginal people, and the person behind the desk was a white person, and like they was using words like deadly. Like deadly is kind of a word in the Aboriginal community of like that's cool, that's really awesome, and they were like trying to use like, hey brother, this is deadly, I can't wait, this blah blah blah, and they were trying to talk to me as if, you know, I'm trying to get on my page as an Aboriginal person. And I'm just sort of like, oh, no worries, thanks, sir. Like, I'm just going to take the application. I don't know why the heck I was in there. But I think, like, if you try too hard to try and talk to us, like, you don't have to talk to us. You don't have to call me, you know, brother, or this is deadly, or let's have a yarn. They say, you know, let's have a yarn means let's have a talk. You don't have to use that much. Like, we get you. We speak English too. So, like, yeah. So I think that's maybe what you were meaning. Like, I think people think that just because I'm Aboriginal, you're going to build rapport with me by using phrases that we use. We use those phrases because that's sort of how we talk. It's our language. You know, yarn is our language. So I understand if you use our language, that's fine. Like people saying bonjour to you or something. But it gets annoying after a while. It gets annoying sometimes, doesn't it?
It's exactly. And I don't think this is really a race thing. This is just like a different cultural thing. It's exactly the same with Aboriginal people, with French people, with black people as well. It's don't try to use our language just to look cool or just to look like, hey, look, I'm not racist. Look, I'm not racist. Because it's called racism by being condescending. It's just I'm going to try to talk your language, or I'm going to try to talk in your your language, just because I'm afraid that if I don't do that, you're going to think I'm a racist person. And also because if I don't talk your language, then you might not understand. And for me, when people do this, or when people just overprotect black people or any culture that's not white, and just like accepts anything that you would never accept from a white person, I also find it very racist. Everyone is the same because your skin color and your where you come from is different. It doesn't matter. If you're a cunt, you're a cunt. It doesn't matter if you're white or black cunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it happens on both sides. I mean, it probably happens in my culture as well. You know, people might do that to Italian populations or other populations. It's just kind of like there is like a certain thing in the Australian humour or in the Australian way that we do kind of like the tall poppy syndrome. We try to bring everyone down so that we're all like the same level and try to be all real with each other. But then there's a certain threshold, there's a certain point where it does, like you say, it becomes racist. And, you know, unless you're feeling the vibe of the other person that you can talk like that, maybe just talk properly.
No,
you don't have to.
You don't have to try to like push a fake friendship just because that person is different than you. That's just, it bothers me when I see that. And in France we have a lot of this as well, because there's a lot of people from so their parents are and they were born in France, but yeah, they have backgrounds, and they get excused from so many crimes all the time. So
yeah, that's a good point actually, because I would like to make that point about Indigenous people as well. Like, lots of people say, oh, Indigenous people get it easy, or they have to go to this, there's like jails for Indigenous people, like that's more of a healing center, and they do the cultural approach. I mean, I know some of those places and they do jack shit for people. They don't bring punishment on them. It's a fun center of make new friends, make new, you know, that kind of thing. That's not what punishment at jail is for. It's to learn a lesson. And I think that there is enough in prisons already for cultures. There's already people that visit you. There's Aboriginal liaison officers that will visit you in a prison. So I would definitely promote the idea that, yes, those centres are good, but it doesn't mitigate the reality that you do need to suffer the punishment of what you've done, just like anybody else. You can't just get a free ticket that I'm black and I get a free pass. And that's the same thing that I experienced when I was in uni. Oh, you've got the Aboriginal stream. They'll be easy on you for exams. They'll be easy on you for this. I didn't even tell them I was Aboriginal. They probably thought I was Indian. Like, they didn't even know that I was Indigenous. So whatever easy stream you think I didn't get that. So I think that there's some myths on both sides, but there's definitely myths in the white population that think that Aboriginal people either get it easy, or I understand that there's Aboriginal people that think that they'll get it easy. Oh, I'll just go back to prison and I'll get I'll get, a good feed or something like that at prison because they're struggling outside. Those kinds of perceptions are going to take a while to get rid of, but I definitely understand what you mean by some cultures are getting it easy because, look at their past and we need to forgive and stuff. But it's somebody's life at the end of the day, like you said.
Yeah.
And there's impact on the community. So, yeah, it's difficult to find that sweet spot. But I definitely think that law is law. I have a sister who works in law, and I think that it's important that morality is morality and justice is justice. It doesn't matter what colour skin you've got, everybody is, needs to suffer the punishment. So, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I can understand that, sorry, sometimes you need to sort of adapt justice for people, but, for example, you can't really punish someone who has bipolar tendency or who's quite clearly a sociopath because of their mental health. But at the same time, it's not because you have some difficulties that you have to be, cuddled on the back and a little pat on the back saying like, oh, you killed someone, but you know what, you've had a tough past, so you go. So no, it's just it's very hard to find a balance, and I understand this. But once again, Aboriginal people, black people, white people, we should all be in the same plane, equity, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, like you said, with the mental illness as well. There are reasons why people do certain things, and that can be down to mental illness as well. But what I work with people every single day that have, criminal matters, and we talk about, this is something that we will help you and advocate for you, but at the end of the day, you do need to realize that this was also you, and you need to show as much effort in recovering from your mental illness to the courts. And so people might think also, if I talk for mental health patients as well, they might think, oh, they'll get it easy because they have a mental illness. On the other side, behind the scenes, what you don't see is that the court actually gives that person a treatment what we call a community treatment order, where for the next 12 to 18 months, they have limited freedoms. They have to abide by a treatment plan that is very stringent. They don't get the freedoms of just leaving the state. Some people have to stay in that state until they get better, or they have to stay in a facility or a hospital until they get better. So it's not just they get off. There are actually things behind the scenes where they have to comply with a treatment plan that will cause them to not be able to have the freedoms that perhaps you and I have. So there's lots of things behind the scenes that it's not just they get off free. They do have other things that they have to do to pay back for what they did to get better and not do it again. So yeah.
But it's working mental health. This is like kind of the same thing that I see also with the people that I follow and then my friends. It's like you can fuck up. You can fuck up one time, you can fuck up 100 times, it's okay. As long as I see that you are trying at the end of the day, and you're trying when you can, because sometimes you can't. With intense depressive episodes, you can't really try anything for your life. But as long as at the end of the day I can see that there's still a try and still remorse and everything, I will be here. But if you're not, then I'm gone, because I'm not just like a free therapist, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
All right, I have one last question, and this one hits really hard for Australian people. I'm sorry, guys. How do you feel about Australia Day?
Wow. I suppose for me, it's not really a thing. I suppose Australia Day is, celebrating Australia and what we are today. I'm kind of neutral. I'm not fully against it, but I don't celebrate it. It's sort of like Christmas. As an atheist, how do I feel about Christmas? I think it's for people who are religious. So I think for Australia Day, I think it's for people who, that they're celebrating, their Australia. So however they choose to do that is fine. It comes and goes. So for me, it's just like Christmas. It happens every year. It's not something that I really focus on or care about or practice. I don't put Australia Day things up for me. I just don't really, it's not a thing for me. I know some Indigenous people call it Invasion Day, and that, they talk about it in that way, but just even that word, just calling it Invasion Day, it just shows you've still got the resentment there. You're still not letting go. It stirs anger and hatred and division on that day that has the residual effects for the rest of the year, and it just stirs people up and it causes division. What do you think you want white people to do? Do you want them to go back to their country? How are we going to do that? How are you going to do that?
Hey, no, I'm trying to say thank you.
And I know I'm probably going to get hate mail, but I get that just being atheist. So if I get hate mail for being Aboriginal as well, then yeah. But I don't know, what do you want people to do about Australia Day? What do you want people to do about it? We've recognised it. We've asked they've asked for forgiveness. But even at the end of the day, even if they didn't say sorry, if a person doesn't say sorry to you, are you going to forgive them or not?
You still have to.
Exactly. It's up to you. So we did get a sorry for the stolen generation. But if you're waiting for sorry, then join the rest of the world and all the other countries that are waiting for sorries from other cultures and that. So it's really up to a person to move on and let go. And one person at a time can lead to an entire group of people, a culture. So yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it.
I think that one of the things that could be done, because I kind of understand, just because it celebrates a day that's so painful. I don't know. I don't have any, France, the National Day in France is us basically killing everyone, but it was population killing our own population, so it's a bit different. But it's celebrating a day where an entire culture got almost wiped out and, invaded. And I think one of the easiest solutions would be maybe to just move it from a week, or not even, or maybe a month. But I understand, but at the same time, you're right. There's a certain point, if that can't be done, you can fight for it, but you still have to forgive. and you still have to say, we would really like that to happen, but at the same time, if it doesn't happen, it's not going to eat me up, and it's not going to make me angry about things that happened when I wasn't even born. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's something that, like, at the end of the day, I don't control that. I don't control what day a person celebrates what, but I can choose how I celebrate or if I don't celebrate it, and how I react to it. I'm not an activist in any sense. I'm vegan, but I don't act. I'm not an activist. I'm an atheist, but I'm not an activist. I'm very kind of just neutral on all of the areas. I don't want to be too staunch against something, because I don't really care. Like, I don't have the time or the energy to like be on board something and try to make movements and stuff. I think that I'm just me and just going through life. But I understand other people have their reasons and I have more impact on them. And I understand, yeah, that's how they respond. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, like you can forgive and just try to let people celebrate. Let people celebrate the way they want to. And if you forgive and you don't celebrate yourself, maybe more people will look at you with sort of a passive revolution and say,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, you're not celebrating. Why? Ask the questions, get some proper answers, and then they'll probably join you. You don't have to fight with fists to get a
Exactly.
revolution. Yeah.
And that's a good point. People will ask, like, what is your, you don't talk about it much, or what is your perspective on it? And then you can have a civil dialogue about it and then speak to people that way. You get more people on board with you than screaming and shouting with a sign. That goes for both things, like religion, screaming and shouting that I'm, going to go to hell or something. That's not really good communication. It's not going to get me interested in wanting to come have a conversation. But you put a question mark on a poster and walk quietly or something, somebody might come up and say, hey, I just want to know about your poster. So yeah. It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
It is, but I also understand that sometimes a good riot helps. I'm French at the end of the day.
It's good for the media too. So
yeah. So the good thing with the riot is because the media captures it because it's dramatic. Then more people will hear about it. But we're in a very good era of social media where you can talk about anything and actually get heard most of the time. So I don't know, if you really want to change the date, keep doing the petitions and keep having people signing it. Do some peaceful riots. You can do that as well.
And that's actually interesting that you say that because, every year the Invasion Day thing, I can imagine all the white people just going, here they go again, we're waiting for all of this. But what they didn't realize is this year on TikTok, there were a lot more viral Aboriginal videos where it was an Indigenous person actually calmly explaining why this isn't something we celebrate and the actual history of what happened to Aboriginal people. And there was lots of white people on there going, shit, I didn't know that, or wow, like that impacted me. So that kind of different approach actually worked for a lot of people. They would have just seen the TV and another riot, but then they go on TikTok and they get the message and it impacts them more because of the different style of communicating the message.
Of course, we can't always keep the same style of communication because we keep changing and we change faster and faster nowadays. But it's talking calmly about what you think and actually understanding the other person and being empathetic with the other person as well is essential. I try to explain to my mom still that I have anxiety disorder and she still doesn't want to understand it because she's French and in French we don't talk about this very much, but it has been years where I'm just trying to nicely explain and I'm just like, this is my point of view. I get that you don't understand it, but Mom, you have anxiety too. But yeah, it's a very good message. You don't have to be resentful and you don't have to use violence or aggression to spread a message. It goes always so much better when you're nice with everyone.
Yeah, exactly. We're all human at the end of the day. We all respond to that the same way. If you're defensive and argumentative and start up here, then that's where everyone else is going to reach.
It's also understand. Most people don't understand that our emotions are very, very contagious. And even if you hide it, your body language will show discomfort or aggression or anger very easily, and the person in front of you will catch it straight away. So
exactly.
just try to feel a peace inside.
In psychology, we call that mirror neurons. So you can mirror somebody's neurons by, if you're calm, new psychology shows that you will actually cause their neurons to adapt and to mirror yours. And we use that when we work with people who are up here, or they're experiencing some sort of anger or aggression. By doing some self-regulation, you can actually mirror their neurons and they will come down as well. So
that works every time, guys. If someone is actually aggressive, sorry, there's a massive cockatoo that almost flew on my window.
It's the Australian way.
Yes. I love this country. Yeah, it's just even if someone, you have to try to train your brain to do it automatically. So if someone is bothering you on the streets, or if someone is being a dickhead in front of you at Woolworths, I don't know, try to be very calm and just give them love, even if they do not deserve it. And you'll see how people's reactions change straight away, and they give you love straight away. And that, when I realized that, I just, perception, once again, change everything.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're done. Thank you so much, Cael.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. That was really, really interesting for me, and I loved everything you said. It was amazing to have you and your beautiful lashes on the podcast. And if you guys have any questions for Cael, I will obviously link his Instagram, his TikTok, and everything that I can on any podcast description, and on Instagram he will be linked as well. And here you go. Thank you for listening, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.